Brompton Cemetery. Today it hosts over 700,000 visits a year and 205,000 people are buried here. Seems like an odd place to be a place of beauty, and let alone a tourist attraction, and yet it is still claimed to be in the top registered Grade 1 English Heritage Register of Parks and Gardens. Located in the Royal Borough of Chelsea in London, this is one of the 6 originally private-owned cemeteries to appear in the 1830s and the 1840s. Hi, my name is Billy Colston and I'll be talking to you about Brompton Cemetery. Brompton Cemetery was founded around the 1830s to 1840s. About 1837 was when it was actually started to be open. In 1837, we had a big problem. In the 1830s and 1840s, many of the cemeteries actually here in London were starting to be overfilled. So they had to come up with a different solution. They basically founded this commission that was based on actually making more cemeteries, and it was actually a privately owned company. They founded this, and one of the interesting parts was actually this was the second cemetery to be made out of 6 during this time period. They were all privately owned initially. Then later on, Brompton Cemetery would become a actually state-owned cemetery, and even to this day it still remains that way. It's owned by the Royal Park Service and maintained the same way. Also initially made not only to be a cemetery but also be a recreational park that was used by people basically to come here and just have a nice day, to enjoy the weather, which is kind of a great situation, don't you think? The cemetery, which is also home to many famous historical figures, is indeed home as well to Blanche Roosevelt.
Blanche Roosevelt, born October 2nd, 1853, died September 10th, 1898, was born Blanche Roosevelt Tucker. She was an American opera singer, author, and journalist. She is best remembered for creating the role of Mabel in The Pirates of Penzance by Gilbert and Sullivan, when the opera premiered in Broadway, 1879.
Hi, my name is Alex Griffin. I will be introducing you to the burial of Blanche Roosevelt and why she is a significant burial and give you some facts about her life. She was the daughter to W.H. Tucker, who was later a senator in Wisconsin.
Tell me a little bit something about Blanche's singing career.
Well, actually, Blanche traveled with her mother throughout Europe, first in Paris and later in Milan for vocal settings. So that's pretty interesting.
Interesting. Can you tell me anything more about Blanche?
I mean, she had a royal debut in London, actually, at the Royal Italian Opera House in Covent Garden. And that made her the first American to sing Italian opera in that opera house.
Interesting.
Right. So, any more questions, Billy?
Yeah, so what can the monument, her monument actually tell us about?
Well, the monument can actually tell us that she comes from an affluent background, her father being W.H. Tucker, who was a senator in Wisconsin, and she later married an Italian aristocrat named Marquis de Allegri. So you can tell that she had money because when you go to the graveyard, you can see that not everybody has a monument, so it's kind of like a rarity. And you kind of see what kind of social class and upbringing she came from. It shows that basically she came from a family of money, and she lived as a socialite actually after retiring from opera. So, Billy, I heard that you looked more into the cause of death of Blanche Roosevelt. So, tell me more about that.
So actually, Blanche Roosevelt, she lived at the late part of her age. She actually ended up living in the southern of France.
Okay.
How she died actually was very interesting. She was actually in a carriage, and the horses somehow pulled her carriage over, and she actually died inside the carriage. She died at the age of 45, so it's very early. I mean, actually, for those times, it was probably about one of the ages that was closer to when you would die, but still definitely a very interesting death, and it would have been interesting to actually observe those bones and get them to see what they actually tell us about it.
And tell us more about what type of burial it was.
So this burial actually was a primary burial. And that means she never actually was moved from basically her original place that she was buried.
Okay.
So that means that nobody has gone in there, dug her up, taken her out for any kind of reason. She was never disturbed. Basically, her burial has remained the same since they buried her following her death.
So Billy, while we were at the cemetery, I remember you telling us a little bit about the history and about the founding of it. Can you tell us a little more about the current situation of the cemetery?
Yeah, so the cemetery has two of the original entrances. It has the south entrance and the north entrance. The one that we actually came through was the north entrance. It was a little interesting because it kind of is actually framed now, as you saw, by the stone on the sides and the big iron gates.
Okay.
An interesting thing about actually the cemetery, actually the location where she is she's actually located in the very central part of the cemetery. It's just kind of this big circular foyer, as you saw. It has some nice columns. But originally, the actual person who designed the cemetery didn't want anybody to be there. He actually wanted that space to be clear, no gravestones, and actually wanted that to be an area where they could plant a lot of foliage and look very nice. Unfortunately, a lot of people start actually making their graves there. And that's why you see all the tombstones and this almost like mass amount of people there because everyone wants to be in that area. And it's actually it kind of alludes to the fact that this was originally supposed to be thought out as almost a recreational area as well as a graveyard, but now mostly it's almost entirely a Brompton Cemetery. Even though, as we saw, many people were walking by, many people were there, and constantly are going through that almost division between park and cemetery kind of got.
Yeah. Okay.